Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Corn Civics. If this is your first time, as this is one of my first videos, my name is Brian. I'm a high school social studies teacher. Most people call me Corn. My students call me Corn after my last name. And this is my YouTube channel called Corn Civics. My goal with this YouTube channel is to educate people in a more open-minded way and neutral way about these topics that I think are really important to know about, and B, my students constantly ask me about as well. And so I'm going to try to cover more contemporary, right, present, current event topics in a way that hopefully is approachable for people. So today's topic, if you can't tell, is really popular right now in American politics, which is what happens if Biden drops out. If President Biden decides not to run for a second term, as many people are calling him to do, including a lot of significant people in his own party. We'll talk about what that looks like, because I think a lot of people are hearing that, and understandably so, that Biden is extremely old, and that there's calls for him to push, drop out. But what does that actually mean in reality? So we're going to cover that today, and hopefully you get a general understanding. If you are interested in topics like this, I'll definitely cover the 2024 election. We're going to talk about basics of politics, like what's a liberal, what's a conservative. Then subscribe. If there's any other current event topics or political topics or legal topics, I teach U.S. history, law, and government. So it is something that I'm passionate about and would be willing to and love to create videos for. So, leave a comment if there's anything you're interested in and subscribe. But other than that, let's just jump into it. So, there's three options if Biden drops out, right? Option one is he doesn't. He stays in the race. This is the most cut and dry option. He's going to remain in the race, and there's very little that the Democratic Party could do, even if a lot of them want him to drop out. If he personally wants to stay in the race, he won their primary. The Democratic National Convention is about a month away from now, on August 19th, and it's more of a formality that all of the delegates and electors would then vote for him, right? He earned those in the primaries. He won those with the American people, and so they would almost certainly vote for him. There is a way in which they could theoretically not vote for him, but that just would be unheard of and would not happen. So option A, or option one, is the simplest. He stays in the race. He becomes the Democratic Party's nominee against Donald Trump in the coming election. That's not probably why you're here, because that one makes sense. So the other two are if he drops out. If he drops out, I think the most likely option is option two, is that he drops out and then immediately supports his vice president, Kamala Harris. And says, hey, she's the one that I want to be the president, the one that I want to be the nominee for our party, support her. The reason that she's the most likely nominee, if he drops out, is for a variety of reasons. I've listed four here that I think are the most important. Financially, when it comes to the $91 million that the Biden-Harris ticket has fundraised, the only person legally, at least easily, that could get access to those $91 million is Kamala Harris. She's a part of that ticket. She's, one of the two people that people have been donating for. So if she just replaces Biden as the nominee, she can use those $91 million, which is not a small number, to continue to support their campaign. The second is name recognition. The average American voter, when they go to the voting booth, is not super concerned with the policies, even if that's something that we want them to be. Instead, they kind of vote either based on party or by name recognition, especially in lower level tickets. So Biden is the most noteworthy Democrat, right? Tim tends to be the one that people know the best outside of maybe Obama, right, who was the former president as well for them. So if he steps down, they lose a lot of name recognition. So it would be an ideal option if they chose someone who has strong name recognition, if not as strong as Biden. And obviously Kamala being the vice president, she probably has the second strongest name recognition there, which would just help them out in terms of getting her, agenda out there, her policies out there, and just her name out there for people that, a lot of people wouldn't have to learn her name. Legitimacy is a really big one, more legally and maybe constitutionally, and it feel better for people in a democracy, is when, Biden, wins the primary, when he already won, Harris does as well, right? People vote for their vice presidential nominee as well. And so they voted, and Harris has won her primary. And so just from a legitimacy standpoint, people are going to feel better if they voted for this person. Like, yeah, I supported Kamala as the vice president. right? I'll obviously support her as the president as well. There's very few people that would support her as VP, but not as president. So that just makes people feel better. And we'll talk about like why that matters on the next slide. And then last but not least, excitement. She's not a young candidate, but she's definitely a younger candidate, a couple decades younger than President Biden. And so this would motivate a lot of people, especially young voters, to go out and vote, because right now Biden isn't really attractive, right? Biden is not a candidate that young people are like, yes, I want to go vote for Joe Biden. They're more like, if they're voting for Joe, like they're voting for Biden because he's not Trump, right? They're not voting for Biden because he's Biden, if that makes sense. So if Kamala becomes the ticket, the nominee, then people are going to be a lot motivated, especially younger people, more motivated to be like, oh, this is more energy, might remind them more of Obama if they remember Obama, and it could, motivate them then to go out and vote, which maybe they won't if Biden is the front man on the ticket. Now, option 3 is the most chaotic, and I think the one that's most confusing for people, so we'll spend some time on it. Let's say Biden drops out and he doesn't support Harris as nominee. That means that the Democratic National Convention in August will be an open convention. So an open convention is essentially where the Democrats, anyone that wants to run, can run. Excuse me. So let's say that Biden drops down or steps down and does not endorse Kamala. Then any Democrat that's interested can try to convince the delegates at that convention that Biden had won, but now has relinquished, that they should be the party's nominee. And so it'd kind of be just like an open debate, essentially, right? If you've ever seen like the Republican debates, right, that happened this year, even though Trump didn't participate, that's what it would be like, essentially, but for the Democrats trying to choose their new nominee. And so people try to sell themselves. This is why I believe that I'm the best replacement for Biden. This is why I should be the nominee for the Democratic Party. And it would be a contest. This contest could take longer than those 4 days that are allocated in August for the Democratic National Convention, the DNC. So let's say that happens. And Harris can still run, right? Just because Biden doesn't endorse her doesn't mean that she's like, oh, I can't run. She would still probably be the front runner because people know her so well and she's the current VP. But there are others that could challenge her and have an okay shot at doing so. I've listed a few on the right side there. Gretchen Whitmer. She's a very popular governor from Michigan. Michigan's really like a purple state is what I like to call it when I have students. One that is pretty mixed and pretty even, and tends to be in recent times more of a swing state. She has firmly made, at least for the governor seat, a blue state because she has done so many good things for her state. Gavin Newsom is the governor of California. He's more divisive of a figure than Whitmer is, but he is more well established within the Democratic Party than Whitmer, so he'd have that going for him. And realistically, as sad as it may be, he's a man. And so we've never had a female president, so that is something that Whitmer and Harris would have to get over and make history doing, which some voters, unfortunately, may see as a reason not to vote for them. And then last but not least, which I think will be a long shot, is J.B. Pritzker, another governor, this one of Illinois. He is a very influential speaker. He's really good at communicating his thoughts and ideas. He's given a lot of speeches at commencement addresses these past couple of years, as well as just obviously in his governorship. But I believe that the ticket would most likely be Harris paired with one of these 2 or 3 as her VP. But that's what would happen. They'd have to sell themselves, and then the delegates would vote until they get a majority, not a plurality. So let's say all 4 of these are trying to bid, and Harris gets the most, but only with like 40%. You need to get at least 50.1% of the delegates in order to become the party's nominee. So they would narrow it down. If she got like 40, Whitmer got 20, and Newsom got 25 or whatever, and then Pritzker got like 11, then they would just eliminate Pritzker, and then they vote again. And then they would have Harris, Whitmer, and Newsom run against each other until one of these candidates gets 50+% of the vote. That's where the party would then choose their nominee. And then that presidential nominee gets to choose their VP, and that's what would become the ticket. So it'd be very chaotic and very hectic and kind of concerning, probably for a lot of voters, especially Democratic voters. But that is a process that could occur. Now, these are the 3 options in front of Democrats, right? And really, the choice is for Biden to make, not for Democrats as a whole. Though you can see in the news that Democrats are calling for him to drop out. Let's talk about the pros and cons of Biden dropping out, right? Why are people calling for him to drop out? He's the incumbent president. why is there so much push for him to step down? So the pros of stepping down is one I've already mentioned. Biden is not an attractive candidate, right? Biden is extremely old. Biden is not the greatest speaker, as we saw in the first debate, and even at several press conferences since then and throughout his presidency. This should be a shock to people, right? He's been president for 4 years. He's been old all 4 years, and the fact that this is now coming up, I think, is more interesting than the fact that, like, yes, he is old. We should have already known this by now. So if they replace him, if he steps down, they're going to get someone younger in that position, which is good, just naturally going to be more attractive. People want to vote for someone that is a good speaker and has, is more in their, not prime necessarily, but, not elderly. The second is just his competency, which goes along with his age. That people are worried about his ability to speak, his ability to have difficult conversations, to deal with the stress of being, the president of the United States. And so just genuine concerns about, can he handle that office are coming up. And so again, if he drops down, then someone else that's younger is going to take that place, and that worry gets alleviated. And then third is more of like a political strategy. Republicans have been marketing on the fact that Biden is old and senile and lazy and all these negative connotations with being old, and it's all been pointed at Biden. So if Biden drops down, Republicans have to scramble to figure out, okay, how can we attack Harris or Whitmer or whoever becomes the new nominee, which will be a difficult job because you can't just point to you can't say Harris is old, because she's not, relative to other politicians. Then Trump becomes the old candidate at nearly 80 years old. Now, the cons of him stepping down. Biden is an established politician. He is well known, not just in the United States, but globally. Our allies tend to love him. He's well respected within the international community and foreign policy. And so we lose a lot of traction there in terms of just name recognition with him stepping down. Second, the Democratic Party, if they can't come to a consensus, especially if that convention drags on for more than those 4 days, then it could cause more division within the party. That you could begin to see factions split and form within the Democratic Party that could lead to the third con, which is then voters looking at this from the outside, because the National Convention is all these more elite people, right, Republican and Democratic, in their conventions that are voting for the nominee, essentially, right? And so voters looking from the outside in at this are going to be like, wow, the Democratic Party does not have their act together. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have a clear vision for America. And so either A, I'm going to vote for the other ticket that maybe I don't agree with but has a clear vision, or B, I'm not going to vote at all, and that's one less Democratic vote. And so it's really important that if Democrats do decide to have Biden step down and try to replace him, they do so efficiently, and they do so as a group. And they come forward and say, this is our ticket now. It is going to be Harris and Newsom, or whoever it's going to be. Oops, sorry about that. And so they have to do so very unified. And if they don't, then it could look really bad. So I get why Democrats are scrambling and why there seems to be calls for Biden to resign and also hesitation for Biden to resign. I think it all stems from just fear of another Trump term. Democrats and a lot of independents, even some Republicans, are really terrified of what a Trump second term could mean for this country, especially for things like Project 2025. And so I think that it's more, they don't know what they're doing and they're scrambling because they just don't want him to win. So it's quick overview is the Democratic Party's at a crossroads. They have to decide what they want probably in the next week or two because there's, we get closer and closer to the election. It's harder and harder to replace Biden if that's what they're going to do. At the end of the day, this is Biden's choice. There can be immense amount of pressure put on him, but if he decides that, no, I'm going to stick through it and I'm going to be the candidate for the Democratic Party, he's going to be the candidate for the Democratic Party. And so then Democrats need to rally behind him. Right now, I think it's okay to have dissenting visions, but, if he decides that, he's going to be the party's nominee, then if Democrats want to win, then they need to rally behind him. So it'll be interesting to see in the coming weeks and months what the Democrats decide to do. But I hope this video was helpful and illuminated kind of what those pathways look like for the Democratic Party and answered any of the questions or confusions that maybe you had. Again, my name is Brian. Corn Civics is the channel. Please, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what you thought or any other questions maybe that this video provoked for you. I would happily answer those for you in the comments, or even create a video over any of those topics if you want me to delve deeper into them. So thank you so much, and happy voting.